Maya's hands moved through the air with surgical precision. Complex medical signs James Brennan had never seen anyone use outside a hospital. She signed to his mother. Progressive. Supranuclear. Palsy. Then fingerspelled. PSB, deterioration. The billionaire froze, his $4.2 billion empire built on pattern recognition collapsing in 0.6 seconds. What he didn't know, Maya had diagnosed his mother's condition in 30 seconds of watching her sign. What she didn't know, his last caregiver's lie had killed his father 3 years ago in the same hospital where her brother died. Before I reveal what happened next, drop your city below. I need to know where my truth seekers are watching from. And hit subscribe, because what this waitress did next triggered a chain reaction that would expose everything James Brennan had been hiding. The espresso machine hissed its third shift symphony at 11:47 p.m., steam curling through the landmark grill's dining room like expensive perfume. Maya Chun moved between the leather booths with practiced efficiency, her worn non-slip shoes squeaking softly against marble floors that radiated cold even through the rubber soles. Table 12, a corporate celebration. 8 executives drunk on success and a $400 wine pairing. Maya had memorized every order without writing a single word. 2 ribeyes medium rare, 1 with truffle butter. 3 salmon fillets, 2 with the caper sauce, 1 plain. 2 lobster tails. 1 vegetarian risotto for the CEO's assistant, who always ordered last. She delivered each plate with precision, her hands moving in a choreographed dance she'd perfected over 18 months. Impressive memory, the CEO remarked, sliding a crisp $100 bill across the table. You been here long? Long enough, Maya replied with a smile that paid rent. What she didn't say, I have a master's degree in speech-language pathology gathering dust in a drawer and $67,000 in medical debt crushing me every single day. She touched the silver bracelet on her left wrist, unconsciously, the way she always did when thinking about Daniel. The engraving caught the chandelier light. Daniel. Her fingers formed the ASL sign for brother against her apron before she caught herself and dropped her hand. Nobody here knew she signed. Nobody here knew anything about her except that she was efficient, competent, invisible. The financial math played on repeat in her head like a nightmare she couldn't wake from. $412.18 in her checking account. Rent due in 5 days. $1,350. Tonight's tips so far, $287 if the corporate table came through. Still short. Always short. The restaurant smelled like money, aged beef, expensive wine, the leather cleaner they used on the booths every morning. Maya had worked doubles for 6 days straight, her exhaustion bone deep, the kind that made her vision blur around 3 a.m. when the bar crowd finally stumbled out. But exhausted paid better than rested and unemployed. She cleared table 7, her reflection catching in the floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking Elliott Bay. A ghost in a black uniform, dark circles under her eyes, hair pulled back, so tight it gave her headaches. 29 years old and unrecognizable from the graduate student she'd been 3 years ago, before Daniel's leukemia diagnosis, before she'd abandoned her degree with only 3 months remaining, before the hospital bills had swallowed her future whole. Her manager Rick's voice crackled through her earpiece. Maya, table 15, just sat. VIP reservation. Don't screw this up. Copy that, she murmured, grabbing fresh menus. She had no idea that table 15 would change everything. That in less than 20 minutes, a simple act of kindness would trigger a chain of events that would expose her hidden expertise, destroy her anonymity, and force her to choose between staying invisible and risking everything she'd struggled to build. The espresso machine hissed again. Maya took a breath that tasted like other people's luxury and headed toward her fate. The temperature in the restaurant dropped 3 degrees when James Brennan walked through the door. Not literally, though the November rain that followed him inside certainly helped. But Maya felt it in the way every staff member suddenly stood straighter, moved faster, smiled harder. Rick appeared from the back office like he'd been summoned by some invisible billionaire alert system, his hand extended, his voice pitched 2 octaves higher than normal. Mr. Brennan, welcome back. Your table is ready, of course. Maya watched from behind the bar as her manager practically bowed. She'd worked here 18 months and had never seen Rick defer to anyone. James Brennan moved through the space like he owned it, which Maya would later learn he almost did through a complex series of real estate investments. Mid-40s, over 6 feet, wearing a charcoal suit that probably cost more than Maya's entire year of rent. His salt and pepper hair was cut with mathematical precision. His movements controlled, economical, deliberate. Nothing wasted, nothing unconsidered. But it was his eyes that made Maya's spine straighten, sharp cataloging. The eyes of someone who read people the way she used to read medical journals. They swept the dining room in 2.3 seconds, absorbing everything. The couple arguing quietly in booth 6. The waiter who'd been checking his phone by the kitchen. The fire exit that someone had propped open for air. "That's James Brennan," whispered Carla, the hostess, appearing at Maya's elbow. "Brennan Technologies? The AI accessibility company? He's worth like $4.2 billion. Do not screw up." Maya's stomach tightened. VIP table. Of course. James was flanked by 2 others. A sharp-suited woman with a tablet who had to be his executive assistant, and a brick of a man in an expensive jacket that didn't quite hide his security earpiece. The trio moved toward the private section, the best table in the house, always held for him even when he didn't have a reservation. Other diners noticed. The hedge fund manager at table 8 nodded in recognition. The tech startup founders at the bar straightened, clearly debating whether to approach. One elderly woman smiled at him warmly. James paused. Maya watched surprised as the billionaire stepped aside, holding the door for the elderly woman as she struggled with her shopping bags. His voice was courteous, almost gentle. "Let me help you with that, ma'am." He steadied her elbow, made sure she was through safely, then returned to his party without seeking acknowledgement or praise. Interesting, Maya thought. Not pure villain. Then complicated. The moment passed. James was back on his phone before he reached the table, his voice dropping into that particular tone of someone closing a deal. "I don't care what the board thinks. The acquisition happens by Friday or we walk. Tell them they have 48 hours. He ended the call without waiting for a response. Rick intercepted Maya on her way to the table. He orders the Penfold Grange, 2015. $400 a bottle. Don't ask if he wants to see the wine list. Just bring it. And Maya? Rick's hand gripped her shoulder. Perfect service. He tips 30% when he's happy, 0% when he's not. Maya nodded, her mouth dry. She had no idea she was walking toward the man whose mother she was about to help, and whose trauma she was about to trigger. James Brennan's phone call lasted exactly 11 minutes. Maya knew because she'd been hovering near the kitchen, watching table 15, waiting for him to finish his urgent conversation with lawyers about some AI ethics merger that apparently couldn't wait until morning. He'd stepped outside onto the covered patio, leaving his executive assistant to review contracts and his security chief to scan the restaurant like threats might materialize from the truffle risotto, and leaving his mother, who he'd introduced to Rick as Catherine Brennan, visiting from Portland, sitting alone at the table, looking increasingly distressed. Maya noticed the moment Catherine's composure cracked. The older woman, early 70s, elegant in a way that suggested old money, pearls that caught the light, was trying to get the busboy's attention. Her hand raised slightly, her mouth opening, but no sound emerged. The busboy walked past without noticing. Catherine's frustration rippled across her face, replaced quickly by something that looked like resignation, like this happened all the time. She tried again with a passing server, her hands making small gestures that Maya recognized instantly. The universal mime for drinking water. The server smiled blankly and kept walking. Catherine's shoulders dropped. Maya's body moved before her brain could stop it. 18 months of staying invisible, of not drawing attention, of being just another waitress evaporated in the face of someone who needed help. Because she'd seen that exact expression on Daniel's face 100 times in hospitals when nurses didn't understand his signs, when he'd been thirsty or in pain, and no one could hear him. She approached the table carefully, her hands already moving into position. "Are you okay? Can I help you?" she signed. Her ASL fluid, natural, accompanied by the slight facial expressions that gave the language its grammar. Catherine's face transformed. The relief was so profound it was almost painful to witness, like someone drowning who'd just broken the surface. "Water, please," Catherine signed back, her movements slightly stiff, slower than Maya's, but clear. "Thank you. Thank you so much." "Of course," Maya signed, smiling genuinely for the first time that shift. "Would you like still or sparkling?" "Still." And Catherine hesitated, then continued signing. "Could I see the tea menu?" "My son is handling the wine, but I don't drink." Maya felt her heart squeeze. This woman was utterly gracious, making requests like favors instead of demands. "Absolutely. We have a lovely chamomile, or there's a jasmine green tea that's beautiful." "The jasmine, please." They talked for 3 minutes, a brief, beautiful conversation in the language Maya had thought she'd left behind with Daniel. Catherine asked about the specials, her signs careful and precise. Maya responded, her hands falling into the old rhythms, like muscle memory. Catherine noticed Maya's bracelet, her eyes softening. "Beautiful name," she signed, finger spelling Daniel with a questioning expression. "My brother," Maya signed simply, touching the silver band. "He passed 2 years ago." "I'm sorry," Catherine signed and meant it. Then the patio door opened. James Brennan stopped mid-stride, his phone still in his hand, his entire body going absolutely still. His eyes locked onto Maya's hands, which were just finishing the sign for "You're welcome," as Catherine smiled more genuinely than she probably had all evening. The restaurant didn't actually go silent, but it felt that way to Maya. James crossed the distance to the table in 4 long steps. His voice was quiet, controlled, but edged with something sharp and dangerous. "Where did you learn that?" Maya blinked, confused. "I'm sorry." "Sign language." His eyes were cold now, cataloging her with an intensity that made her skin prickle. "Where did you learn to sign? Who told you about my mother?" The accusation hit her like a slap. "A what?" "No one told me anything. She needed help." "Who hired you?" James turned to his security chief, who was already moving. "Rodriguez, find out who approved her background check." Catherine was signing rapidly, her hands agitated. But James wasn't looking at her. His focus was entirely on Maya, and it wasn't grateful. It was suspicious, almost paranoid, like she committed some unforgivable violation. "Mr. Brennan, I don't understand," Maya stammered, her pulse hammering in her ears. "Your mother was trying to order water. I was just helping." "How long have you worked here?" His voice had dropped to that lethal whisper that made every nearby conversation pause. 18 months, but... And in 18 months, you never signed to a customer before tonight?" He didn't believe her. She could see it in his face. "You expect me to think this is coincidence?" Rick appeared from nowhere, his face pale. "Mr. Brennan, is there a problem?" James didn't break eye contact with Maya. "This waitress. I want her full employment file. Now." Catherine grabbed her son's sleeve, signing frantically. Maya caught fragments. "Stop." She was kind. "Leave her alone." But James Brennan had built a $4.2 billion empire on reading people, on pattern recognition, on identifying threats before they materialized. In 0.4 seconds flat, he'd categorized Maya Chun, invisible, ignorant, irrelevant. But in the 10 words she'd signed to his mother, that certainty had started to crack. And billionaires, Maya was learning, didn't handle uncertainty well. Rick's office smelled like stale coffee in desperation. What the hell was that? He slammed the door, his face flushed, a vein pulsing in his temple that Maya had never seen before. "Do you have any idea what you just did?" Maya stood with her back against the filing cabinet, still trying to process what had happened. "I helped a customer. She needed." "You engaged with James Brennan's mother using sign language." Rick's voice cracked. "The Brennan family privacy is legendary." "Legendary, Maya. He has NDAs thicker than phone books. His mother's condition isn't public knowledge." "I didn't know she was his mother when I approached her." Maya's hands are shaking. "I saw someone struggling and I helped. That's literally our job." Rick dragged both hands through his hair. "Where did you even learn to sign?" The question landed like a punch to the sternum. Maya's fingers found her bracelet automatically. That silver band with Daniel's name that she never took off. My brother, she said quietly. He was deaf. Born profoundly deaf. I learned ASL when I was 11 years old so we could talk. Rick's expression softened fractionally, but not enough. I'm sorry about your brother, but you need to stay away from table 15. Don't approach. Don't make eye contact. Pretend they don't exist. You're benching me for my own section? I'm keeping you employed. Rick snapped. Do you understand what Brennan could do to this restaurant if he's pissed off? One bad Yelp review from him and we're done. One call to his connections and our liquor license gets randomly audited until we're bankrupt. Maya wanted to argue, but the math was already calculating itself in her head. $412 in her account. Rent due in 5 days. Medical debt collectors who called every Thursday like clockwork. She couldn't afford to lose this job. She couldn't afford anything. Fine, she whispered. I'll stay away. Daniel had been 12 when a leukemia diagnosis came. All limbs and terrified eyes in that hospital bed at Harborview. Maya was 23, 3 months into her graduate program in speech-language pathology. Finally pursuing the career she'd dreamed about since teaching her little brother to sign his first words. I'm scared, he'd signed, his hand small and precise. Me too, she'd signed back, because lying to Daniel had never worked. But we're going to fight this. For years of fighting. For years of treatment cycles and false hopes and medical bills that accumulated like snowfall. Silent, relentless, suffocating. Maya had withdrawn from her program 3 months before graduation when Daniel's condition worsened, when he needed round-the-clock care, when the choice between a degree and her brother wasn't really a choice at all. He died on a Tuesday in October 2 years ago, in room 847 at Harborview Medical Center. The last thing he signed to her was thank you. She'd promised him she'd finish her degree. She'd promised she'd help other kids like him. Instead, she was slinging steaks to billionaires and trying not to drown in debt. Across the restaurant in the private section, James Brennan was making his own calls. Rodriguez, I want a complete background check on Maya Chun, he said to his security chief. Employment history, education, social media, everything. I want to know why a waitress signs fluent ASL, and I want to know it by morning. Catherine touched his arm, signing slowly. James. She was kind. That's all. That's what we thought about Patricia, James replied, his jaw tight. The name hung between them like a ghost. Patricia, the caregiver who'd claimed ASL fluency on her resume. Patricia, who'd mistranslated Catherine's desperate signs during Martin Brennan's heart attack 3 years ago. Patricia, whose lie had cost 8 critical minutes, and James's father his life. Catherine's hand stilled. She understood, but understanding didn't mean agreeing. This woman is not Patricia, Catherine signed firmly. Maybe, James conceded, but I'm going to make damn sure. Maya Chun just crossed an invisible line. She used her skills to help someone in need, and now a billionaire thinks she's a threat. Before we continue, I need to know, would you have done what Maya did? Help someone even knowing it might cost you everything? Or would you have stayed invisible to protect your job? Be honest. There's no right answer here, but your choice says something about how you navigate power dynamics in a world where the wealthy write the rules. Drop your answer in the comments below, and make sure you're subscribed. Because what James Brennan does next is calculated, invasive, and completely unexpected. This story gets darker before it gets better. And if you're not subscribed, YouTube might not show you other videos like this. Now, let's see what James discovers when he digs into Maya's past. Maya spent her first night off in 6 months hunched over her laptop in her studio apartment. The glow of the screen casting shadows across unpaid bills stacked on her desk. Brennan Technologies appeared in 2.4 million search results. She scrolled through pages of corporate press releases, Forbes profiles, TechCrunch articles praising James Brennan as the conscience of Silicon Valley. His company specialized in accessibility AI, software that helped disabled people interact with technology through adaptive interfaces, voice recognition systems calibrated for speech impediments, visual processing algorithms for the blind. The irony was almost painful. A man who'd built a $4.2 billion empire, making the world more accessible, was treating her like a criminal for helping his deaf mother. Maya clicked through image results. James at tech conferences. James shaking hands with senators. James accepting humanitarian awards. But Catherine Brennan appeared in exactly 0 photographs. Not at galas, not at family events, not even in the background of candid shots. Her existence had been scrubbed from the public record with the thoroughness of someone who had unlimited resources and paranoid reasons. She found Martin Brennan's obituary from 3 years ago. Died peacefully at home, surrounded by family. Private circumstances. No cause of death. No details. Just the carefully curated language of people who could afford to keep secrets. Her phone buzzed a text from Helen, the elderly regular who defended Maya during the confrontation. Coffee tomorrow? My treat. Need to talk. They met at a small cafe 6 blocks from the Landmark Grill, neutral territory where Rick spies wouldn't see them. Helen was 73, a retired social worker who'd been coming to the restaurant every Thursday for 5 years. She ordered chamomile tea and got straight to the point. James Brennan's father died because of sign language, Helen said quietly. Or rather, because of someone who lied about knowing it. Maya's coffee went cold in her hands as Helen explained. 3 years ago, Martin Brennan had hired a live-in caregiver named Patricia Simmons to help with Catherine. Her resume claimed ASL fluency, interpreter certification, 5 years experience, all fabricated. She'd learned basic signs from YouTube videos and hoped she could fake her way through. Martin had a massive heart attack one morning, Helen continued, her voice heavy with old grief. Catherine tried to tell Patricia what was happening, signing that Martin was clutching his chest, that he couldn't breathe, that she needed to call 911 immediately. But Patricia only understood maybe 1 word in 5. Maya felt sick. Patricia called 911 eventually, but she told them Martin was having chest pain, not a heart attack. She said it wasn't urgent. The ambulance took its time, 8 minutes longer than if she'd communicated the severity. Helen's hands trembled around her teacup. Martin died in the ambulance. The EMTs said if they'd arrived 8 minutes earlier, he probably would have survived. Oh God, Maya whispered. James discovered the truth during the investigation, Helen said. Patricia's fake credentials, Catherine's desperate attempts to communicate. The mistranslation that cost 8 critical minutes. He blamed himself for not vetting her thoroughly enough. And now you... She paused, meeting Maya's eyes. You signed fluently. You appeared out of nowhere. And you approached his mother. Every alarm in his head went off. Maya touched her bracelet. Daniel's name warm against her skin. I wasn't trying to hurt anyone, she said, her voice breaking. I was just helping. I know that, Helen said gently. But trauma doesn't care about intentions. James sees Patricia every time he looks at you. But there was something Helen didn't say, something that lingered in the air between them. Why had James reacted so violently not just to Maya's ASL fluency, but to her specific signing style? What had she done in those 3 minutes with Catherine that triggered such fear? James Brennan's office overlooked Elliott Bay from the 42nd floor of Brennan Technologies headquarters. At 2:37 a.m., he sat in darkness broken only by his laptop screen, reviewing the background check Rodriguez had compiled. Chan Maya Elise, age 29, education. University of Washington Speech-Language Pathology Graduate Program, incomplete. Specialization. Degenerative hearing conditions in elderly patients. Program status. Withdrew 3 months before graduation, 27 months ago. Employment history. The Landmark Grill 18 months. Prior service industry positions. Family. Parents deceased, auto accident 2016. Brother Daniel Chun. Deceased age 16, leukemia, Harborview Medical Center, October 2022. Financial status. $67,000 medical debt. 3 credit cards maxed. Rent 45 days past due. Current employer arrangement preventing eviction. Criminal record. None. Social media. Minimal activity. Last post 24 months ago. Red flags. None identified. James read it 3 times. She wasn't a corporate spy. She wasn't a journalist. She wasn't an opportunist researching his family for leverage. She was exactly what she appeared to be. A woman who'd sacrificed her career to care for her dying brother and was now drowning in the aftermath. His phone lit up. Laurentian calling. His business partner and closest friend. The woman who'd co-founded Brennan Technologies with him 12 years ago. Who'd been there through Martin's death and the Patricia revelation. "It's almost 3 a.m., he said by way of greeting. "Rodriguez sent me the background check," Lauren replied. "James, she has legitimate credentials. More than legitimate. She specialized in exactly the kind of conditions your mother has." "So did Patricia," James said, his voice flat. "Patricia lied about her credentials," Lauren countered. "Maya Chen was 3 months from a master's degree at UW. Do you know what that means? She's more qualified than half the interpreters we've hired for company events." James dragged a hand through his hair. "Then why is she working as a waitress?" "Because her brother died and left her with $67,000 in medical debt," Lauren said, her tone sharp. "Because the American healthcare system destroyed her life. Because she made the same choice you would have made, family over career." The words hit harder than James expected. "Her brother died at Harborview," Lauren continued softly. "October 2022. The same month, the same hospital as your father. James, she understands loss. That doesn't mean I can trust her." "No," Lauren agreed. "But it means you should stop treating her like Patricia. She's not a con artist. She's not a threat. She's a woman who helped your mother, and you destroyed her life for it." James closed his laptop. "I'm protecting my mother." "From what?" "From kindness." Lauren's voice softened. "You've been investigating this woman for 3 days. You've had her reassigned at work, so her income dropped 60%. You've made sure she knows you can destroy her with a phone call. When does protection become cruelty?" He didn't answer. After Lauren hung up, James sat in the darkness. His father's face reflected in the window glass like a ghost. Tomorrow was the 3-year anniversary of Martin's death. Tomorrow, James would visit the grave and tell his father the same thing he'd said every year. "I should have protected you better." But tonight, he pulled up Maya Chen's graduate school transcripts that Rodriguez had obtained. Perfect grades, instructor recommendations that glowed. Most diagnostically intuitive student I've trained in 20 years. A thesis proposal on early detection of progressive supranuclear palsy through analyzing sign language degradation patterns. James went completely still. PSP, progressive supranuclear palsy. The rare neurological condition Catherine's doctors had been testing her for over the past 6 months, unable to confirm or rule out. The condition that was slowly affecting her motor control, her balance, her fine muscle movements. The condition that terrified James because it was degenerative and incurable and would eventually take his mother from him the same way Patricia's incompetence had taken his father. Maya Chen's graduate specialization wasn't just degenerative hearing conditions. It was detecting PSP by analyzing how the disease affected deaf patients' signing patterns. And she'd spent 3 minutes having a conversation in ASL with Catherine. What had Maya seen that Catherine's $800 an hour neurologist had missed? Friday night dinner service at the Landmark Grill was controlled chaos. Every table full, the bar 3 deep with people waiting. The kitchen churning out plates at maximum capacity. Maya moved through the back of house prep area. Her hands raw from washing dishes for 6 hours. Her tips for the night totaling exactly $0. Rick had made good on his threat. She was banned from the dining room, invisible to customers. Her rent now 12 days overdue. Then Carla appeared in the kitchen doorway, her face pale. "Maya, Rick needs you in the dining room. Now." "I'm not allowed." "James Brennan specifically requested you," Carla interrupted. "He's here with his mother. He asked for your section." Maya's pulse hammered. This was a setup. She could feel it in her bones. Rick intercepted her before she reached the dining room. "Whatever he wants, give it to him," he hissed. "Apologize. Grovel. Do whatever it takes." "I didn't do anything wrong." "I don't care. Rick snapped. We're 2 bad Yelp reviews from bankruptcy. Serve the table. Table 15 was positioned in the center of the dining room, maximum visibility, a stage designed for public performance. James sat with Catherine and 2 other people Maya didn't recognize. A polished woman in her 50s with a tablet, and a man built like a wall, who had to be security. Catherine's face brightened when she saw Maya, her hands moving instinctively. I'm glad you're here. Maya didn't respond, didn't sign back, terrified of triggering another confrontation. Good evening, she said aloud, her voice steady despite her shaking hands. Can I start you with drinks? Actually, James said, his tone pleasant, conversational, loud enough for surrounding tables to hear. I wanted to ask you something. Interesting skill set for a waitress. Fluent ASL, medical terminology, specialized knowledge. Did you research my family before applying here? The dining room didn't go completely silent, but nearby conversations faltered. People were watching. Maya's throat went dry. I don't know what you mean. James produced a printed document from his jacket, slid it across the table. Maya recognized it immediately. Her graduate school transcripts, her program application, her thesis proposal. Private documents she'd never authorized anyone to access. University of Washington Speech-Language Pathology Program. James read aloud. Specialization in degenerative hearing conditions. Thesis on progressive supranuclear palsy. He looked up, his eyes cold. My mother has been undergoing testing for PSP for 6 months. Not public knowledge. So I'm wondering, did you target this restaurant because you knew I came here? Are you looking for a lawsuit? Media exposure. Maya felt the stares of every nearby table. Her humiliation was a living thing, crawling across her skin. Rick was standing by the bar, his face frozen in horror. No, she said, her voice shaking. I didn't. Then explain how a waitress with your credentials ends up working here. James pressed. Explain why you approached my deaf mother, engaged her in conversation using specialized medical sign language, and never mentioned you had graduate-level training. Catherine was signing frantically at James, her face distressed, but he wasn't looking at her. Maya made a choice. She pulled her phone from her apron pocket, her hand steady now, and opened her photos. Found the one she'd kept as her lock screen for 2 years until the grief became too much. Daniel in his hospital bed at Harborview, thin and bald from chemo, grinning at the camera, his hands forming the sign for I love you. She set the phone on the table in front of James. That's my brother Daniel, she said quietly. He was born profoundly deaf. I learned ASL when I was 11 so we could talk. When he was 14, he was diagnosed with leukemia. Her voice didn't break, though she wanted it to. I was 3 months from finishing my master's degree when his condition worsened. I withdrew from the program to become his full-time caregiver. He died 2 years ago at Harborview Medical Center, and the medical bills that insurance didn't cover totaled $67,000. James's expression flickered, something that might have been recognition or guilt, or both. I work here because I need 3 jobs to pay that debt and keep a roof over my head, Maya continued. I approached your mother because she was trying to ask for water, and no one understood her. I signed to her because it's instinct, because I spent 8 years translating for my brother, because I cannot help when I see someone struggling to communicate. She picked up her phone, looked at Daniel's face one more time. I didn't research your family. I didn't target you. I didn't even know who you were until you accused me of being a criminal for showing your mother basic human kindness. Catherine's hands were moving again, rapidly, emotionally. Maya's eyes tracked the signs unconsciously, her brain processing the language automatically. She's asking you to stop, Maya translated without thinking. She's saying I didn't do anything wrong, that she's grateful someone finally. She stopped, realizing what she'd done. James stared at her. How did you? You interpreted her signing without looking, the polished woman said, her voice shocked. You weren't even watching her hands. Maya had been fluent long enough that ASL existed in her peripheral vision, processed by her brain the same way English did. She'd spent so many years translating for Daniel that she didn't need to consciously watch someone sign to understand them. That level of fluency takes years, the woman continued, looking at James. Decades, usually. 18 years, Maya said quietly. Since I was 11. Helen's voice cut through the tension. The elderly woman had appeared from her regular Thursday table, her face set with determination. I've known Maya Chun for 18 months, she said loudly enough for everyone to hear. She has never once mentioned the Brennan family. She's never asked about regular customers. She's never done anything except show up, work herself to exhaustion, and treat every person who walks through that door with kindness. She looked directly at James. Your paranoia is destroying a good woman for the crime of helping your mother. James's jaw tightened. The dining room was fully silent now. Dozens of witnesses watching the billionaire decide whether to back down or escalate. He escalated. I want her removed from our section permanently, James said to Rick, who had materialized beside the table. If she approaches my mother again, if she attempts any contact whatsoever, I'll pursue harassment charges. Are we clear? Crystal clear, Mr. Brennan, Rick said, his voice strangled. Maya looked at Catherine, whose eyes were filled with tears and frustration. Looked at James, whose fear was masquerading as cruelty. Looked at Helen, who'd risked her regular table to defend a waitress. I'm sorry about your father, Mr. Brennan, Maya said, picking up the documents he'd brought. I'm sorry someone lied to your family, and that lie cost you someone you loved. But your mother's asking for help, and I'd make the same choice again. She met his eyes, because that's what Daniel taught me. Helping people isn't about whether they thank you or threaten you. It's about knowing you could and choosing to act anyway. She turned and walked away, leaving the documents on the table, leaving James Brennan with his paranoia and his guilt. Rick pulled her into the office 30 seconds later. You're reassigned to prep kitchen, permanent, he said. No dining room access. Your tips are cut completely. You're hourly only now. $13.50 an hour, 40 hours a week, if you're lucky. Maya did the math automatically. $540 a week before taxes. Maybe $450 after. Not enough for rent. Not enough for debt payments. Not enough to survive. I understand, she said. She didn't cry until she got home. The eviction notice was taped to Maya's apartment door when she got home at 2:17 a.m. Notice to pay rent or quit premises. Amount due. $2,700, 2 months. You have 72 hours to pay in full or vacate. She peeled it off with numb fingers, added it to the stack of collection letters on her kitchen counter. Medical debt collectors had called 4 times this week. Her student loans were 60 days past due. Her credit cards were maxed. And now her income had been cut by 60% because she'd helped a deaf woman order tea. Her phone buzzed. A text from her former classmate, Sarah. Saw the video. You should sue him. What video? Sarah sent a link. Someone at the restaurant had filmed the confrontation. Posted it to Twitter. Billionaire James Brennan accuses Waitress of targeting his family. Already 40,000 views, hundreds of comments. Maya scrolled through them. Some supported her. She was just helping. Billionaires are paranoid. Others attacked. She obviously researched him. Why would a waitress know ASL unless she was targeting them? Sarah called immediately. Maya, you have a discrimination case. He violated your privacy, accessed your academic records without permission, humiliated you publicly. Any employment lawyer would take this on contingency. I just wanted to help someone, Maya said, her voice hollow. I didn't want any of this. I know, but I can't sue him, Sarah. I can't afford the legal fees even with contingency. I can't risk losing and owing even more money. I can't spend the next 2 years of my life fighting a billionaire who has unlimited resources. She was crying now, the tears she'd held back at the restaurant finally breaking free. I just wanted to help. Over the next 3 days, Maya's world contracted. Her co-workers avoided her, terrified of being associated with someone who'd angered James Brennan. Rick scheduled her for the worst shifts. For AM prep, cleaning grease traps, hauling garbage. Her body ached constantly, her hands raw, her back screaming from lifting industrial trash bags. She researched James Brennan obsessively, looking for understanding. Found articles about others who'd crossed him. A journalist who'd written a negative profile, suddenly unable to get published anywhere. A former employee who'd filed an HR complaint, now blacklisted from every tech company in Seattle. A supplier who'd sued for breach of contract, bankrupted by legal fees before the case went to trial. James Brennan didn't just win, he destroyed. Maya's friend suggested she leave Seattle, start over somewhere cheaper. But leaving meant abandoning Daniel's grave at Lakeview Cemetery, meant admitting defeat, meant giving up the promise she'd made him. She was so tired, tired of struggling, tired of being invisible, tired of a world where billionaires could weaponize their trauma against people who were just trying to help. Maya had been 19 when the phone call came. Her parents, driving home from her college orientation at UW, excited about her acceptance to the speech-language pathology program, had been hit by a drunk driver on I-5. Both killed instantly. Daniel was 11. Maya became his legal guardian overnight, dropping out of college to work 3 jobs while figuring out how to raise a deaf child alone. But Daniel was brilliant, resilient, determined. He taught himself to read at a college level. He dreamed of becoming a teacher for deaf children. He was Maya's entire world. She went back to school when Daniel was 13, taking night classes at community college while he was in school, studying at his bedside when he slept. It took her 4 years to finish her undergrad. She was accepted to UW's graduate program when Daniel was 14. Then came the diagnosis: acute lymphoblastic leukemia, stage 4. The treatment was aggressive. Chemotherapy that made Daniel so sick he could barely sign. Radiation that burned his skin. Bone marrow transplants that nearly killed him 3 times. Maya spent every moment she wasn't in class or at work sitting by his hospital bed, signing stories to keep him distracted from the pain. Her program advisor, Dr. Rachel Voss, had been incredibly supportive. Let Maya do her clinical rotations at Harborview so she could be near Daniel. Helped her design a thesis around what she was observing. How degenerative conditions affected ASL fluency in deaf patients. How early detection of neurological diseases like PSP could be identified through subtle changes in signing patterns. Daniel went into remission when Maya was 3 months from graduation. They celebrated. They planned. Daniel wanted to attend her graduation ceremony. Wanted to see his sister hooded as Dr. Chun. Then the cancer came back. Aggressive, fast-moving, treatment-resistant. The oncologist gave him 4 months. He lasted 6 weeks. Maya withdrew from her program to be with him full-time. Hospice care, pain management, making his final weeks as comfortable as possible. She signed every word he couldn't say. She was his voice when he was too weak to form signs. She held his hand when he died. The medical bills came later. $127,000 total. Insurance covered $60,000. Maya was left with $67,000 in debt for the privilege of watching her brother die. She'd worked for 2 years to pay down, barely making minimum payments. The Landmark Grill was her 3rd job in that time. Better tips than most places, steady hours, management that didn't ask questions. She'd never told anyone there about Daniel. Never mentioned her graduate degree. Never explained why she knew ASL. Being invisible was safer than being seen, until Catherine Brennan needed water, and Maya's instincts overrode her survival skills. The connection she didn't know: Martin Brennan had been on Harborview's board of directors. He died in the same hospital, the same month, possibly the same floor where Daniel had spent his final days. Their griefs had intersected in space and time. 2 families destroyed by loss, and neither knew the other existed. Until a waitress signed, "Can I help you?" and a billionaire's trauma exploded. Maya found the journal on the 4th night after the public confrontation. She'd been packing, preparing to move out before the eviction, trying to figure out which of her possessions she could fit into her car, when she found Daniel's graduation gift at the bottom of her closet. She'd never opened it, couldn't bear to after he died. Inside was a leather journal, and on the first page, in Daniel's careful handwriting, "Maya, You taught me that helping people isn't about whether they thank you. It's about knowing you could and choosing to act anyway. You saved my life 100 times by just being there, by translating, by making sure I was heard. Don't let the world make you small. Don't let fear make you invisible. Finish your degree. Help people. Be loud. I'm proud of you. D. Maya sat on her apartment floor and cried until she couldn't breathe. Then she opened her laptop. She pulled up the 3-minute conversation she'd had with Catherine Brennan, not recorded, but stored in her memory with perfect clarity. Started analyzing Catherine's signing patterns, the way she'd been trained, the slight tremor in her left hand, the way her fingers didn't fully extend on certain signs, the compensatory movements she made when her fine motor control faltered. Progressive supranuclear palsy. Stage 2, possibly early stage 3, affecting her vertical gaze control first, then spreading to fine motor skills. Treatable if caught early. Degenerative if missed. Catherine needed specialized care that James didn't know she needed. She needed a speech-language pathologist who specialized in PSP, who could design therapeutic interventions to slow the progression, who could help her maintain communication skills as the disease advanced. Maya spent 4 hours writing a detailed medical letter, citing her observations, referencing her research, providing contact information for Dr. Voss and other specialists. She included her thesis proposal or academic credentials, Daniel's case files showing her diagnostic accuracy. She had nothing left to lose. James had already destroyed her job, her income, her housing. But Catherine deserved to know. Catherine deserved the help James's paranoia was preventing her from receiving. Maya sealed the letter at 4:37 a.m. and made her choice. She would deliver it, despite the ban, despite the threats, despite everything. Because Daniel was right. Helping people wasn't about whether they thanked you. It was about knowing you could. Helen met Maya at the same cafe, her weathered hands wrapped around jasmine tea. You want me to deliver a letter to Catherine Brennan, Helen said, reading Maya's request. A medical letter diagnosing her with progressive supranuclear palsy, written by the waitress, her son banned from approaching her. I know how it sounds, Maya said, but Helen, she has PSP. I'm certain. Her signing patterns match every clinical marker I studied. And if James doesn't get her specialized treatment in the next 6 months, the window for intervention closes. Helen studied Maya for a long moment. You're risking harassment charges. James made that explicitly clear. I'm risking everything I have left, which at this point is approximately nothing, Maya said. But I can't let her deteriorate because her son's trauma is blinding him to the truth. Why do this? Helen asked gently. You owe them nothing. He destroyed your livelihood. Maya touched her bracelet. Because I know what it's like to watch someone you love slip away while doctors miss the diagnosis. Because I have expertise that could help, and refusing to use it would make me complicit in her suffering. She met Helen's eyes. And because my brother taught me that being invisible is safe, but being seen, really seen, is what changes things. Helen smiled. Daniel sounds like he was remarkable. He was. I'll deliver your letter, Helen decided. Catherine comes to the restaurant every Thursday. I'll make sure it reaches her hands directly. Thank you, Maya whispered. But there's something else you should know, Helen added. Brennan Technologies is hosting their annual accessibility gala next Friday. Catherine always attends. It's one of the few public events James allows. She pulled out her phone, showed Maya the event page. They're using the convention center catering company. I happen to know the owner. She owes me a favor. Maya's pulse quickened. You're suggesting? I'm suggesting that if you're going to risk everything, you might as well do it somewhere James can't immediately have you arrested, Helen said. Public event. Hundreds of witnesses, media coverage. If you approach Catherine there with medical evidence, he'd look like a monster for stopping you. Maya spent the next week preparing. She contacted Dr. Voss, her former advisor, explained the situation. Dr. Voss reviewed Maya's observations and wrote a professional letter of support. Ms. Chen was my most diagnostically gifted student. Her assessment of Mrs. Brennan's signing patterns is consistent with Stage 2 PSP. Immediate intervention recommended. Maya gathered Daniel's case files, evidence of her clinical accuracy, documentation of her hundreds of hours diagnosing degenerative conditions through communication pattern analysis. She compiled medical journals, research papers, everything that would prove she wasn't some conspiracy theorist, but a trained specialist. Helen came through. Maya was hired as extra catering staff for the gala. $15 an hour for 6 hours of serving champagne to Seattle's tech elite. She'd be invisible in a black uniform, another faceless worker, until the moment she chose not to be. Meanwhile, across the city, Security Chief Rodriguez knocked on James Brennan's office door. "Sir, Maya Chen just got hired by Cascade Catering for Friday's gala." James looked up from his laptop. "The accessibility gala?" "Yeah, sir." Background check flagged it. She was hired through an intermediary, probably to avoid our vendor screening. Rodriguez hesitated. "Do you want me to have her removed from a roster?" James should have said yes. Should have had Rodriguez call Cascade and have Maya Chen's employment terminated before she got within 100 yards of his mother. Should have protected Catherine the way he'd failed to protect his father. But Lauren's words from 3 days ago kept echoing. When does protection become cruelty? "No," James said finally. "Let her work the event." "But, Rodriguez, I want you stationed near my mother all night. If Maya approaches her, I want to know immediately." "Understood, sir." After Rodriguez left, Lauren entered without knocking. "You're setting a trap." "I'm being prepared," James corrected. "You're letting paranoia destroy a woman who's trying to help." Lauren sat across from him, her expression troubled. "James, I've known you for 12 years. You built this company on the principle that accessibility is a right, not a privilege. That invisible people deserve to be seen and heard." She paused. "Maya Chen is invisible, and you're making sure she stays that way because you're terrified of trusting the wrong person again." "My mother's health is declining," James said quietly. "The doctors can't figure out what's wrong. They've run every test. Nothing conclusive." And his voice broke. "I can't lose her, Lauren. I can't survive losing her the way I lost Dad." Lauren's expression softened. "Then maybe it's time to trust the person who actually specializes in what might be wrong with her." James didn't respond, but Friday night he'd be watching, and Maya Chen would get exactly one chance to prove she wasn't Patricia. Maya's walking into a trap, but she's carrying information that could save Catherine Brennan's life. On one side, a billionaire's paranoia and unlimited resources. On the other, a waitress with medical expertise and nothing left to lose. Before the confrontation, I need to know, do you think Maya will win through her medical evidence, through moral appeal to the witnesses, or through something we haven't seen yet? Drop your prediction in the comments. And here's why you need to subscribe right now. The next 15 minutes contain 3 revelations that will completely reframe this entire story. You think you know who the villain is? You think you understand what Maya discovered about Catherine? You're wrong. Make sure you're subscribed because what happens at that gala, the medical diagnosis Maya reveals, the connection between their families that neither knew existed, and the choice James makes that no one sees coming. It's not what anyone expects. The Seattle Convention Center glittered like a temple to technology and good intentions. Brennan Technologies' annual Accessibility Gala had drawn 600 guests. Tech executives, disability advocates, venture capitalists, local politicians. And enough media coverage to make the evening news. Crystal chandeliers refracted light across marble floors, while servers in black uniforms circulated with champagne and hors d'oeuvres worth more than Maya made in a week. Maya wore the same anonymous uniform, carrying a tray of sparkling wine, invisible among dozens of other catering staff. She'd been serving for 3 hours, her medical evidence folder hidden in the catering prep room, waiting for her moment. Catherine Brennan sat in the VIP section, elegant in navy blue, pearls at her throat, surrounded by Brennan Technologies executives who spoke over her and around her, but rarely to her. James was 15 feet away, deep in conversation with Seattle's mayor, his security chief Rodriguez stationed nearby like a sentinel. Maya watched Catherine's hands, the tremor in her left fingers when she reached for her water glass, the way she moved her entire head instead of just her eyes when someone approached from the side, compensating for impaired vertical gaze control, the slight stiffness in her neck, the careful, controlled movements that suggested axial rigidity. Every symptom screamed progressive supranuclear palsy. Stage 2? Possibly early stage 3. Catherine stood, signing something to her assistant, then headed toward the private lounge reserved for VIP guests. This was Maya's chance. She abandoned her tray, grabbed her folder from prep room, and followed. The private lounge was empty except for Catherine, who was adjusting her balance carefully as she sat. "Mrs. Brennan," Maya said softly. Catherine turned, recognition flooding her face, her hands immediately moving. The waitress. "From the restaurant?" "Yes, ma'am, but not just a waitress." Maya approached slowly, hands visible, non-threatening. "My name is Maya Chen. I was 3 months from completing my master's degree in speech-language pathology at the University of Washington, specializing in degenerative hearing conditions. And I need to tell you something about your health that your doctors are missing." Catherine's expression shifted from surprise to concern. "How did you—" "Your signing patterns," Maya said, beginning to sign as she spoke. "The tremor in your left hand, the way your fine motor control falters on complex signs, the compensatory movements you make. Mrs. Brennan, these are clinical markers for progressive supranuclear palsy. Your ASL is deteriorating because the disease is affecting your motor control." The lounge door slammed open. James Brennan stood framed in the doorway, Rodriguez behind him, both men's faces set with fury. "Get away from my mother." Maya didn't move. "Mr. Brennan, your mother has PSP. I recognized it because I studied under Dr. Rachel Voss at UW. She's the leading expert in North America on diagnosing PSP through communication pattern analysis." "You have no right," James started, moving toward them. "Your father died in Harborview Hospital October 2022, Maya said, her voice steady despite her racing heart. "So did my brother, Daniel. Same month, same hospital. I saw your family there, Mr. Brennan." She met his eyes. "I know what you lost. I know the grief that's driving your paranoia. But I also know what your mother stands to lose if you don't listen to me right now." James froze, his hand halfway to his phone to call security. Catherine was signing rapidly, her face urgent. Maya's eyes tracked the movements automatically, her voice becoming Catherine's voice. "James, stop. Listen to her, please." Catherine's hands moved with increasing urgency, the tremor more pronounced as emotion overtook control. "I remember you," she signed, her eyes locked on Maya. "Harborview, October 2022. The young woman who sat by that boy's bedside in the oncology ward. You signed to him for hours. I watched you through the window one day when Martin was in physical therapy down the hall." Maya's breath caught. "You saw us. I saw the way you loved him," Catherine signed, tears forming. "The way you made him laugh even when he was so sick. The way you never left his side." She turned to James, signing for him now. "This woman knows what it means to care for someone. She knows what we lost." Maya interpreted automatically, her voice soft. She's saying she remembered me from the hospital. James's expression was unreadable, but he'd stopped advancing. Catherine continued signing, and Maya translated. "I need to tell you both something I've been hiding." She paused, gathering courage. "I knew something was wrong with my signing 6 months ago. I've been hiding a symptom from you, James, because I was terrified you'd become even more overprotective than you already are." James's face went pale. "Mom." "Patricia," Catherine signed, the name heavy with meaning. "I tried to warn Martin about her. I signed to him that I didn't trust her, that her ASL was wrong, that something felt dangerous." Her hands shook badly now, but Patricia mistranslated everything I said. She told Martin I said I'm fine. Everything is fine. Maya's voice broke as she interpreted. She's saying Patricia mistranslated her warnings about Patricia herself. When Martin had his heart attack, I tried to tell Patricia exactly what was happening, Catherine signed, tears streaming down her face. I signed heart attack, call 911, urgent immediately. But she didn't understand. She called 911 and said chest pain, non-urgent. Catherine's hands dropped to her lap. 8 minutes. That's how long my inability to communicate cost us. James sank into a chair, his head in his hands. After Martin died, I stopped signing with strangers, Catherine continued. I was terrified of trusting the wrong person again, of my disability being weaponized against the people I love. But then I met you at the restaurant. She looked at Maya, her expression softening. You signed with such fluency, such natural comfort. And when you looked at my bracelet and signed about your brother, I saw real grief, real understanding. For the first time in 3 years, I felt hope that genuine, competent people still existed. Maya wiped her eyes. They do, Mrs. Brennan. And you deserve care from people who actually understand what you're going through. Maya opened her folder with shaking hands, spreading documents across the marble coffee table. This is Daniel's medical file from Harborview, she said, pointing to the first set of papers. During his final year, I was completing my clinical rotations in the speech-language pathology department. My thesis focus was on how degenerative neurological conditions affect communication patterns in deaf patients. She pulled out annotated research papers. Progressive supranuclear palsy typically presents with balance issues and falls first. But in deaf patients who rely on ASL, we can detect it much earlier through signing degradation. James leaned forward, examining the documents, his hand trembling slightly. Your mother's signing shows classic PSP markers, Maya continued, pulling out her handwritten analysis from 3 weeks ago. Tremor and fine motor movements. Difficulty with vertical gaze affecting how she tracks conversations. Axial rigidity causing neck stiffness that impacts signing posture. These symptoms suggest she's in stage 2, possibly early stage 3. Her doctors have been testing her for 6 months, James said quietly. They can't confirm anything, because they're looking at physical symptoms that won't become obvious for another 6 to 8 months, Maya explained. But PSP is treatable if caught early, not curable but manageable. Physical therapy to address balance issues, speech therapy to maintain communication skills, medication to slow progression. The window for intervention is closing. She produced the final document, a letter on University of Washington letterhead. I reached out to my former advisor, Dr. Rachel Voss. Despite having dropped out of the program, Maya said, I sent her my observations of your mother's signing patterns. This is her response. James read aloud. Maya Chin was the most gifted diagnostic student I've trained in 20 years. Her pattern recognition abilities are extraordinary. Based on the signing analysis she provided, I concur with her assessment of stage 2 progressive supranuclear palsy. I recommend immediate evaluation and intervention. Please have Mrs. Brennan contact my office. Rodriguez stepped forward, his phone already out. Sir, I verified Miss Chen's credentials 3 days ago when she registered for catering. UW confirms she was top of her cohort, 3 months from graduation when she withdrew. Dr. Voss confirms this letter is authentic. Everything checks out. James set the papers down carefully, his hands shaking now too. He looked at Catherine, who was watching him with an expression of hope and fear mixed together. Looked at Maya, who stood there in a catering uniform with documents that could save his mother's life. You were trying to help her, he said, his voice barely audible. This whole time you were trying to save her, and his voice broke. James Brennan's carefully constructed control shattered like glass. He sat heavily in the nearest chair, elbows on his knees, head in his hands, his shoulders shaking with suppressed emotion. The billionaire who commanded boardrooms and built empires looked suddenly, devastatingly human. I've been so afraid of trusting the wrong person, he said, his voice raw. So terrified of making another mistake, like Patricia, that I've been hurting the right ones. Catherine moved to him, her hand on his shoulder, signing with her free hand. Maya translated softly. She's saying you've been trying to protect her, but protection became a prison. I isolated you, James said to his mother, not looking up. I vetted away every potential caregiver, every ASL interpreter, every person who could have helped you. I turned my grief over Dad into paranoid control, thinking if I could manage every variable, I could prevent loss. He finally looked up at Maya. And when you appeared, competent, fluent, exactly what my mother needed, I saw Patricia. I saw the lie that killed my father. I couldn't see past my own trauma to recognize genuine expertise. Maya's throat tightened. Mr. Brennan. I destroyed your livelihood, James interrupted, standing now, facing her directly. I had you demoted, investigated, publicly humiliated. I used my power as a weapon against a woman who was trying to save my mother's life. His voice cracked. I am so profoundly sorry. Maya stood silent for a long moment, Daniel's bracelet warm against her wrist. Your grief doesn't excuse what you did to me, she said finally, her voice steady but not unkind. You cost me my income, my housing stability, my dignity. You weaponized your pain against a service worker who couldn't fight back. She paused, meeting his eyes. But I understand it. Daniel's death almost destroyed me too. Grief makes us irrational. It makes us cruel to protect ourselves from more pain. James nodded, accepting the judgment. Here are my terms, Maya said, her voice firmer now. Get your mother to Dr. Voss immediately. That's what matters, her health, her treatment, her quality of life. As for me, I need my job back with full back pay for the 3 weeks you cost me. And you don't get to weaponize your trauma against service workers ever again. Use your power to help people, not destroy them. Done, James said immediately. All of it, and more. James Brennan didn't wait. He pulled out his phone, called Rick Delacroix at the Landmark Grill, and put it on speaker so Maya and the witnesses in the lounge could hear. Rick, this is James Brennan, he said, his voice carrying the authority of someone used to instant compliance. Maya Chun, you're reinstating her to the dining room floor immediately. Full section privileges. Full tip pool. She's also receiving back pay for the 3 weeks she was demoted, plus a $5,000 bonus for exemplary service. Rick's voice sputtered through the speaker. Mr. Brennan, yes, of course, what have you? Effective immediately, James interrupted. And Rick, if I hear you retaliated against her in any way, or if any staff member treats her poorly, the Landmark loses every dollar of Brennan Technologies' corporate dining budget. Are we clear? Crystal clear, sir. James ended the call, looked at Maya. That's the start. Then he walked back into the gala. The ballroom had reached that point in the evening where donors were feeling generous. Champagne had loosened tongues, and the MC was preparing closing remarks. James stepped onto stage, took the microphone from the surprise host, and faced 600 guests. I need to interrupt for a moment, he said, his voice carrying across the room, because I owe someone a public apology. The room went silent. Maya stood at the back with Rodriguez and Catherine, her heart hammering. Tonight is about accessibility, about ensuring disabled people have the same opportunities, the same dignity, the same voice as everyone else, James continued. But I've spent the last 3 weeks doing the exact opposite. I've been destroying a woman's livelihood because my fear made me blind to the truth. He gestured to Maya. Maya worked as a waitress at the Landmark Grill, but she's also 3 months away from a master's degree in speech-language pathology, specializing in degenerative hearing conditions in deaf patients. She approached my deaf mother to help her order tea, and I accused her of corporate espionage. Uncomfortable laughter rippled through the crowd. I'm not joking. I had her investigated, demoted, publicly humiliated, because the assumptions we make about people based on their job titles blind us to their expertise, their humanity, their worth. Maya felt tears forming. 20 minutes ago, this waitress diagnosed my mother's progressive supranuclear palsy, a condition that 3 $800 an hour neurologists missed, James said, his voice thick with emotion. She did it because she has specialized training I refuse to see. She risked harassment charges to deliver medical evidence that could save my mother's life, and I treated her like a criminal. He paused, looking directly at Maya. Ms. Chen, I cannot undo the harm I've caused you, but I can try to prevent it from happening to others. James turned back to the audience. Effective immediately, Brennan Technologies is establishing a scholarship fund for students who've had to leave medical and accessibility programs due to financial hardship. We're committing $10 million over 5 years. It will be called the Daniel Chun and Martin Brennan Memorial Scholarship, named after Ms. Chen's brother, who died of leukemia, and my father, who died because I failed to protect him. The applause started slowly, then built. Ms. Chen, could you join me? James asked. Maya walked to the stage on shaking legs. James handed her an envelope. This is a check for $67,000, he said quietly. For her ears only. The exact amount of your medical debt. I don't want charity, Maya said. It's not charity, James replied. It's payment for the medical consultation that saved my mother's life. You earned this, Dr. Chin. He emphasized the title she'd never gotten to use. And I'd like to fund your completion of the UW program, if you'll accept, plus a position on Brennan Technologies' accessibility R&D team, developing communication tools for deaf patients with degenerative conditions. Maya looked at Catherine, who was signing from her seat. Please, let us help you the way you helped us. Maya held the check, felt its weight. The weight of 3 years of crushing debt. Gone in an instant. I accept, she whispered. The ballroom erupted in applause. Maya sat in the front row of Professor Voss's Advanced Diagnostic Communication Seminar, her notebook open, her mind fully engaged for the first time in 3 years. She was back at UW, completing her final semester. The scholarship James had established paid her tuition, her rent, her living expenses. The $67,000 check had cleared her medical debt marked paid in full by collections agencies that no longer called. She still worked nights at the Landmark Grill, not because she needed to anymore, but because she wanted to, because Rick had apologized and her coworkers had welcomed her back, because being a waitress had never been something to be ashamed of. Thursday afternoons, Maya visited Catherine at the Brennan family home overlooking Puget Sound. Not as a caregiver. James had hired a team of certified ASL fluent professionals, but as a friend. They signed about Daniel, about Martin, about loss and healing and the strange ways grief connects people. Catherine's PSP treatment was progressing well under Dr. Voss's care. Physical therapy 3 times weekly, medication to slow progression, speech therapy to maintain her signing clarity. James was learning ASL himself, attending evening classes at the community center Maya had recommended. He was awkward, fumbling, making mistakes that embarrassed him and delighted his mother. But he showed up every week, practiced diligently, and slowly began to communicate with Catherine in her native language. Maya still worked nights, still came home exhausted, but now she introduced herself as Maya Chin, graduate student in speech-language pathology, with pride instead of shame. Her new purpose had crystallized. She was designing accessibility communication tools with Brennan Technologies' R&D team, creating AI-assisted signing analysis software that could detect degenerative conditions earlier, help more patients like Catherine, save more families from preventable loss. She no longer hid her expertise. She was finally powerfully visible. 6 months after the gala, Maya received an unexpected email. James Brennan had stepped down as CEO of Brennan Technologies, appointing Laurentian as a successor. He'd enrolled in a doctorate program at UW, Accessibility Technology Ethics, and was studying 3 offices down from Maya's graduate research space. His first published paper appeared in the Journal of Medical Ethics, The Cost of Assumptions, How Class Bias in Healthcare Delays Diagnosis. Maya read it during a study break, her throat tightening as she reached the dedication page. Dedicated to Patricia Simmons, who lied about her credentials not from malice, but from desperation. A woman fleeing domestic violence who needed work to survive. My father's death was tragedy, not malice. And to Maya Chen, who taught me that expertise exists everywhere if we're brave enough to see it. James had researched Patricia's background, discovered her truth, and was now funding certification programs for vulnerable populations seeking caregiver work. Redemption, Maya thought, looked like action. Maya Chen's journey from invisible waitress to recognized expert took 18 months of documented struggle, 3 years of grief, and 1 moment of choosing to help someone who needed it. But here's what I didn't tell you. This is story number 7 in my Hidden Expertise series. I've documented 47 cases of invisible geniuses working in plain sight. Janitors who speak 6 languages, security guards with PhDs, delivery drivers who were once surgeons. Next week, the hotel housekeeper who discovered a tech CEO's terminal diagnosis through discarded medical papers and saved his life anonymously, changing an entire company's approach to employee healthcare. Subscribe now and drop below. What hidden skill do you have that would shock people who only know your job title? I read every comment. Your story might be next. 6 months later, Maya's graduation ceremony. Catherine and James sat in the audience as Maya crossed the stage to receive her master's degree. Special recognition: the Daniel Chen Memorial Award for Clinical Excellence. Final image: a nameplate being installed on a new clinic door. Chan and Associates, Speech-Language Pathology, where every voice matters. Catherine's hands formed the sign, proud. Maya signed back, thank you.